and welcome back to the Elise Yeezy Show. I'm your host, Elise Yeezy, and today I'm joined by Rachel Oates. Hello.
Hi. Oh, thanks
How
for
are you?
yeah, good. I was gonna say like thanks for having me, but I don't know, I guess this is kind of like a thing we're doing together. But thanks for having me on your podcast channel. Yeah.
No, that's all
Um
good. Yes, this is a
yeah.
new thing
Oh,
that we're
sorry.
doing together.
I feel like I'm not in the flow of speaking yet. Words are hard sometimes. Do you ever get like that?
Do you know what? I have a big problem with like not wanting to interrupt people because I swear I was told my whole life, don't interrupt, it's really,
Mm.
really rude. That was drilled into my head. But then when you go out there in the big wide world, everyone like is always interrupting each other. Sometimes to the point that if you're speaking to someone and you're in the middle of a sentence and you've not taken a pause, but they all just start speaking. And when people do that now, I double down and continue what I'm saying. And it's like two people are just having a conversation with each other. And I hate it. But apparently the reluctance to interrupt stuff is a bit of a neurodivergent ADHD thing.
Oh,
Apparently,
that
a
makes
little bit.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do have issues with like struggling to know when it's my turn to speak in conversations. I find it really hard in groups. That's why like most of my friends I
Yeah.
see them like one on one because they stop talking and then you start and that makes sense. But in a group, it's like, well, I don't get when you're meant to start. There's just all these people talking at once, and usually I just sit there like and get overwhelmed. Great.
Oh, you just have to go for it. You just have to say something and interrupt because everyone does it. So I guess it's not rude, you know. I find the worst thing is like if I'm in a conversation with a bunch of people, I'm thinking of all these funny things to say. And then I don't say any of them. And then someone else will say what I'm thinking and they'll get a good laugh. And I'm like, well, I came up with it first. I just didn't commit to the bit.
See, it's probably because they are like telepathic and they're stealing your jokes. So really, I think you need to like sue them.
Do you ever get worried that people are reading your thoughts?
Oh my God, yeah. Do you ever do that thing when you're in public where you like think something weird and you're like, if anyone can hear this? And then you look around for reactions.
No, I get a bit more like, oh God, I hope that no one is listening to me right now. You know, I get a bit worried, like paranoid, like that. You know.
Oh, I'm always like, okay, like doing little tests. It's so stupid. I'm a skeptic at heart. I shouldn't think these things, but I do.
Well, I do that with animals actually. You know, I'll telepathically think if you can understand this right now, can you wink? Can you blink? Can you do something? Never works, but one day.
Oh. See, me and Kyra have like whole little conversations, not telepathically, just like in person. I'll be like, what do you think of this baby? And she's go, I'm like, oh, me too. I think we can understand each other. Yeah.
I think so with dogs because we have evolved with them for a couple 100,000 years. So I think that they can actually, because what the most intelligent dogs can learn is it 250 words or
Yeah, it's a
500
lot.
words,
A
something
lot.
like that. But I think they can understand a little bit more than that
Oh,
because
yeah.
the evolution alongside, you know.
I think it's, there's that thing where like mothers can recognize the cries of their baby and like they
Yes.
can pick out their baby and they know what their baby wants from the cries. I get like that with Kyra. I'm like, I can recognize what she wants from the noises she makes. So I'll do a
Mm.
thing sometimes. I'm like, what do you want, baby? And she'll make a sound. I'm like, oh, your water's empty. Okay. And I don't know how I know that from like the noise she's making. It's like a subconscious thing. I couldn't be like, oh, that noise. But in the moment, you're like, ah, I know.
Mm.
It's almost instinctual.
Mm.
Interesting, isn't it, Beast?
Well,
Yes.
speaking of animals,
Mm.
guess what happened today? And this, I'm not happy. I'm hot right now, and I dare not open the balcony.
Oh God, what?
I'm a prisoner in my own home. I just had the door open. I'm just chilling, watching Gilmore Girls, you know. And I
As we do.
see, I see a hornet the size of my thumb, like that, like buzzing around. So I leap forward and I smash the
Oh,
door shut.
God.
And then it was just sitting on the balcony, like just sitting there for
What?
ages. And at one point I got some water and I kind of like flicked some water at it to see if it had died. And it started moving. And I was like, oh God. But it was so I've never we live in England. I've never
Yeah.
seen a hornet before. Like it was, I'm not joking, it was the size of my thumb, like the length of, I've never seen that before. I'm terrified.
Ridiculous. God, I don't like that. I did think you were going to say something like a mouse or a rat at first, and I was like,
Oh no, I'm fine with them. I
like,
like mice and rats. They're fine, but no, big hornets. And I was Googling it and stuff, you know, just to make sure that it was a hornet. And I
mm,
think it was a European hornet. And I thought to myself, what? European? What do we have Brexit for then? We're getting these hornets. I'm joking. No, but like I've never seen a hornet in real life, and that is, dude, that is scary. That is some bad shit. I felt like I was in Fallout with some sort of radioactive bug that had grown like 5 times its size.
Have you seen those bugs they have in America? They're like cicadas, I think they're called. The fact that like those
Mm.
just fly around and exist is terrifying to me. Like I couldn't imagine seeing one in real life. Just
There's
freaks me
there's
out.
loads of them in Japan actually, because like
Really?
in the noise that they make, they use that in like loads of animes. Just
Uh,
whenever someone's outside, there's always that weird kind of like
yeah,
shh noise of
yeah.
the cicada.
Have you seen that video of the dog who caught one in his mouth and he was just holding it? And the owner's like, "What have you got in your mouth? What have you got?" And every time he opens his mouth a little bit, it gets louder. It's
Yeah, I
terrible.
have seen that. Ugh.
Oh, poor
Insects,
dog.
no thank you. I tell you, I am a vegan and animal rights activist, but as soon as like I get a hornet as big as my fist, that's going out the window.
Would you eat insects?
No, because I just don't really have an interest in doing that in the first place. So I mean, I'd rather have some crisps.
So it's
Would
a
you?
taste thing, not an ethical thing. I don't know. Logically, I know it's no weirder than eating any other animal, but there's just some mental block in my mind I can't get over. But my sister has. She got this whole like snack box of insect snacks essentially, and it was like chocolate covered locusts and like bugs that had been mushed up to create like protein bars and stuff. And she was like, "Yeah, it's all really tasty, really nice." So yeah, she's into
That's
it.
like that film Snowpiercer where they're on the train that keeps going forever. Have you ever heard of this? I've never
I've heard
seen
of it.
it, but yeah, but I saw a YouTube video like about this theory that actually Charlie from Willy Wonka,
Mm,
like Snowpiercer is a continuation, it's the sequel to Charlie and Chocolate Factory because the guy who made it is actually it was a really compelling video, even though it sounds nonsensical, right? But they were eating like uh well, I guess not candy bars, but just squares made of
mm.
bugs and locusts and stuff. I don't know, like I guess I don't feel a compulsion to. I don't think I'd get squicked out by it or anything because
Yeah.
I'm not that squeamish when it comes to stuff, you know. Like I don't look at a piece of raw meat and go, oh, you know, like some vegans they'll have a breakdown if they see a bit of, you know. I'm fine with that, right? Which I don't see the need. Like I'll just have some McCoys instead. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you know,
There's better
maybe
things to eat.
you know, if there was an apocalypse and
Mhm.
there were just massive, like they're called rad roaches in
Oh yeah.
Fallout, you know, yeah, if that was the only meat going around, though, even if the rad roach is like, you know, 2 foot 2 foot long, would it have meat to speak of? It's an insect, so does it have meat on it? Because meat is muscle. Do insects have muscle, or is it just exoskeleton?
I don't know, because like things like locusts and stuff that people eat and like grasshoppers and whatever, they're apparently really high in protein, but I don't know what exactly it comes from. Like,
Hmm.
which bit of them is proteiny? I don't know.
Should I get a bug expert on?
Yes.
Ask them these questions. If there was a nuclear apocalypse, what would be the best insect to get protein out of?
Yes.
Mm.
I think that's an important question we all need to answer or know the answer to. Yeah.
I
I'm actually
had.
oh
Oh,
sorry.
okay. The neurodivergent thing. Okay, I'll go first. No, I had like this nuclear expert on. The episode's not out
Oh,
yet, though. Yeah, by the time this is out, that one should be out. Brian Toon. I should have asked him that. Like, what bug would you eat if nuclear Armageddon happened and you survived, and then all the insects were like 10 times then, or was like, which bug would you eat? I should have asked him. He would have known.
so I literally started reading a book today called Extraordinary Insects, and I'm
Mm.
like literally 20 pages in, like not very far at all. But apparently there are some bugs that are so small we can't see them with the human eye, but they're like fully functioning little living organisms that are basically just scaled down versions of like every other insect. So there's like these midges that are so small they can land on the tip of a human hair and still be like, still have a couple of them on there. They're that small. It's crazy. Oh, insects, they're cool. But there's also insects that are so big. Like there's one, I think it's a type of cockroach that weighs as much as a blackbird, which is horrifying.
Yeah, I'm
It's
just
just
trying to
so
work that out.
dense and big and Mm,
Do you know
no,
what I never liked? You know, in the film, the hit film, Brendan Fraser, The Mummy. Yeah.
I've never actually seen it.
Oh my God, no, it's like it's a really good film. And funnily enough, actually, like The Mummy is kind of like one of these films where it was sort of like a sexual awakening for a lot of people because everyone in the film is just good looking. Like everyone, but people I feel like most people were crushing on Brendan Fraser. He looked really
Yeah.
good at the film, right? Or is her name Rachel Wood? Yeah, I think her name's Rachel Wood or whatever. But there was this guy, he plays a Medjay, which is like an Egyptian warrior. I'm probably butchering that. He was always my favorite. You'll have to look this up. Like he was always my favorite for whatever reason. Like he was the one that I had a crush on. But they have like these scarab beetles, and
Mm.
there's a scene in the film where they like burrow into like is Omar Dajali, the comedian, he was in it, and they burrow into his skin and they go like up into his brain and he smacks
Oh,
himself into a wall and dies.
oh God, I hate that so much.
Yeah, so I was always really scared of scarab beetles, despite living in England, not being anywhere near them.
Understandable. Like when you're a kid, you're scared you're going to die in quicksand, right? Because everyone always tells you quicksand's dangerous and you're going to die in it. We're in the UK.
Yeah.
We're not going to die of quicksand.
I went for a cycle ride with my dad once and we had to go across this really just wet sandy area. I don't know where we were. And I started to sink a little bit because it was like the tiniest amount of quicksand. Like I must have sunk a few inches and he had to like pull me out. But I was like, this is the end. Someone write my will. My sister can have my PS1.
I have a similar story, but not as nice. It's really embarrassing. So when I was like 16, I did my Duke of Edinburgh Bronze Award, as you do.
Mm.
And I'm not really a camping type person. And I'm not a very strong person. So having to carry all my stuff was horrific. And I also couldn't afford things like proper walking boots and stuff. And, being from a poor family, the school helped me out a bit and they like lent me a rucksack, they lent me walking boots and all this stuff, but the only size walking boots were a bit too big for me, which wasn't too much of a problem. Just stuffed them with extra socks and stuff and it was fine, until the second day on the way back it started chucking it down with rain and everything was so muddy and boggy everywhere, and we're going through this big field full of cows, and in the middle it's just a big boggy patch of mud and cow mess and all this stuff. And as we're going through, my boots start sinking in, and because they're a bit big, they start getting a bit loose.
Oh
And
God.
I lost a boot. So I'm there, this big rucksack that's like way too heavy for me, way too big for me, trying to get my shoe back in a boot, hopping around like one legged. And yeah, basically I just fell straight first into this cow field and got covered head to toe in mud.
Oh
And
God.
yeah, that was a fun day.
That sounds great. When you said about the school lending you these boots, I had like a random thought of, do you ever remember being in like reception, like year 1 and 2, like an infant school,
Yeah.
and you forget your PE kit, so then you have to just do PE in your underwear? Like,
Oh,
did your school do that?
we had to do that anyway up to year 4.
No way.
Yeah, we didn't have PE kits up until we were in year 5. We just had to do it in like vest and knickers. It was so embarrassing. I hated it.
Well, that's another thing too, like vests. When did we all stop wearing vests? Because as a little kid, you have to wear a vest all the time. As an adult, I've never worn a vest in my life. Like, when
Um,
does that stop?
I was 11. I know that much. I got my first little like crop top style training bra thing when I was 11, just about to go to secondary school. That's when I stopped wearing vests. I felt like a big grown up.
So, shall we get on with today's
Yeah,
episode?
Gilmore
Um,
Girls.
Yeah, so I'm going to just briefly explain to the audience what the hell's going on. I love Gilmore Girls. I don't know if that is rogue of me, but I don't know if my audience would expect me to be. I think Gilmore Girls is my favorite TV show. Like, I think it is. I've rewatched it so many times, and I'm currently on another rewatch of it. I'm in the middle of season 5, and I love watching it and then seeing what other people think and dissecting the episode and stuff, Usually I just message one of my mates who doesn't watch Gilmore Girls and he's like, why do you act like these people actually, exist? Because like he just doesn't get it. It's just so, I think it's a fantastic character study. I think everyone is so layered, multifaceted, complex, you know. There's all these parallels. I think it's a great show. So Rachel also likes Gilmore Girls, and I figured
which may be
why
less surprising for people, I think. But like,
right?
I think a lot of people think that I'm gonna really like Rory and really relate to Rory, and I'm like, no, she's the worst character in it.
Oh my
But
God, whenever I see people being like, "Oh, Rory is just so relatable to me," I'm like, "Really? The little homewrecker?"
oh my god, even just rewatching the pilot for this episode, I have things to say about Rory.
Same,
We'll
same.
get into it.
So for me, by far the worst, like the villain of the series for me is Christopher. I think this is what's kind of compelled me to do this
Mhm.
because I'm going to make some Gilmore Girl related content on the main channel anyway, you know. But I saw some clips on YouTube and I saw people being like, "Oh, Christopher was her soulmate," just um, right place, wrong time. And it's like, sorry, have you watched the same show as I'm what you mean the complete deadbeat dad who, as far as I'm concerned, he does not give one shit about Rory, only in relation to how he can get closer to Lorelai. You know, the only person he cares about, like, barely even cared about his own kid, like his own Gigi. That Gigi's mum had to run away to a different country for him to just like learn how to change a nappy. We'll get to it. We'll get to it in a few years' time. So I figured Rachel and I would go off and we'll watch each episode, you know, starting from the very beginning, its inception, starting from the pilot, and then we're just going to discuss and dissect the characters. All good? Everyone's clear on that?
I'm very excited to do this. I think it's gonna be good.
I
Oh,
think, and this is quite the thing we're committing to, by the way, because there's like 7 seasons, there's a revival. Um, like I'm so committed to this because I just love rewatching Gilmore Girls. So I'm all in, which is what Luke says to Lorelai when they start dating. So
also, Luke's the hero of the program. You cannot convince me otherwise. I love him. I'm Team Luke all the way.
I love Luke so much, but my boyfriend saw me watching Gilmore Girls and he was like,
Oh,
"Who's
yeah.
that man? He's all scruffy. Who is he?" And I was like, "Don't you dare speak his name." You
I
go
was gonna say
first.
I can't believe he doesn't like Luke. I think Luke's a beautiful man.
He just won't give him a chance because he also just won't sit and watch Gilmore Girls with me. Like he just won't, which I think is
Film him.
unfair because I
Film
have
him
to
right now.
well, I have to go watch Marvel films. Like, you know, you could at
Yeah.
least sit down and watch 7 seasons of this TV show, 45 minutes a piece, 22 episodes a season. You could, like, at the very least, you know, I went to see Doctor Strange in the cinema with you, right? No, I went to go see the Suicide Squad, the remake, not the one with Jared Leto. I went to see the Suicide Squad in the cinemas
There's
with
another
my
one.
boyfriend. Yeah, it's got Margot Robbie in, it's got John Cena in, and I hated it. Like I was so miserable. So he owes me big time for that. Like I've still not got over that, and that was like a year ago.
Oh, bless.
No,
Oh.
I'm joking. I'm really low maintenance actually. Right. So, episode 1 was the pilot. Now, the pilot does what a pilot does. There's actually not going to be loads for us to really get into because the pilot has to introduce all of the characters. The basic plot line of it is Rory. Well, Lorelai and Rory are a mother-daughter duo, single mum, teenage kid. Rory gets into a private school called Chilton, and then she starts acting like a brat because of a boy. Now, Chilton is a very expensive private school. It's, I think it's just made up for the show. So Lorelai has to go to her very rich, wealthy, estranged, yeah, parents to get a loan, but only on the basis that Rory and Lorelai have Friday night dinner with the parents here on after. That is the basic gestalt.
It's interesting because like I think the pilot does such a good job of like setting up all the characters. But at the same time, if you only watch the pirate and then say, okay, let's imagine there's no character development. Where do you see these people being in 7 years' time? You can literally predict, especially with Rory, exactly what's going to happen to her just from her behavior in the pilot.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
go on.
Oh my, is she? So Rory's set up to be this like everyone's like, oh my God, Rory's so smart. Rory's got such great good grades. Rory can do this and this and this, but we never actually see any of it. We don't see
Mm.
her studying hard. We don't, I mean, we hear she reads a lot of books, but that's about it. We don't actually see her doing anything good or being nice to anyone. Like, she kind of takes everyone around her for granted, like getting Michelle to do her French check over a French essay for her and stuff like that. And he's like, "No, I don't have time." And she's like, "Okay, great. Pay attention to the grammar. Bye." And it's like, hey. And then like she finally gets everything she wanted, and then throws it all away because suddenly a boy's on the scene. She's fickle.
Yes,
Mm.
I did notice that. However, I did think that in the pilot episode, Rory, well, first of all, she had a deeper voice, which I much prefer over her baby voice. But I looked into this, and apparently Alexis, is it Bledel? I don't know how to pronounce her last name. I'm sorry, but Alexis had caught pneumonia before doing season 1. So for all of season 1, her voice was recovering, so it was naturally a little bit deeper because of a sickness. I didn't know that, but I do prefer the deeper voice because I do think the baby voice gets more and more pronounced as the seasons go by. And it sounds a bit odd when it's coming out of like a 22-year-old woman at the end who's actually like 24 or 25 in real life. Regardless, I think Rory in the pilot episode is a lot more sullen. She's a lot more moody. She's a bit snappier. She talks back to Mrs. Kim. She makes like a joke, and then Mrs. Kim is like, boys don't like funny girls or whatever.
I actually found her quite likable up until the moment she met Dean. And then
oh, really?
for the rest of the pilot, I was like, no.
Yeah, I feel like in the pilot, they're more of a traditional mother-daughter dynamic. I feel like Lorelai is the one trying to push the whole, we're best friends, tell me everything, tell me about this boy. And Rory's being a bit standoffish towards it. But then Lorelai does put her foot down and say to Rory, no, you're going to go to Chiltern.
Yeah.
And like Lorelai season 5 would not act like that with her.
No.
Rory.
I love that moment. I literally have like I made notes while I was watching the episode, like watching it. I was like, I wish we saw this a little bit more throughout the whole series because, like, that moment, she's actually a mum, and you actually,
yeah.
Oh my god, sorry, did you hear that? It was Siri that time. no, sorry, I just activated Siri while I was speaking. And it's like, yes, and freaks me out. Anyway, sorry, scared myself a bit. This happened when we were filming before, I think, as well. But I set off my Google Nest thing then. I don't like having voice activated things in the house. They scare me. And yeah, I have so many. But yeah, I want to see more like actual parenting opportunities from her. And like when she told off Emily, being like, no, I've done everything for myself. Like I'm a self-made woman, like be proud of me. And Emily has the cheek to turn around and say, like, yeah, but imagine where you'd like, yeah, you've done all this now, but imagine where you'd be if you'd just taken some money from us. I was like, ooh, that angered me. But I loved like Lorelai's like passion and fire and independence there. And I feel like they made her more and more irresponsible and silly and childlike as the series went on. Whereas she started off like being fun and whimsical and silly, but still an adult, you know?
Oh no, I totally agree. I think Lorelai, in the pilot, she's coming across as very independent. You know that she doesn't want to get the handout from her parents or whatever. She's a proud woman. She has a line where she says, I became an adult as soon as the line turned pink, about her teenage pregnancy, right? And that for me is not really though, because as the series progresses, it's weird because when I was a teenager and I first watched this, I thought Emily and Richard were the worst. And I do think that I think they're very compelling. I think Richard is way worse than Emily, and we'll get onto that like later on. But actually, it's funny, getting older, I have a little bit more sympathy for Emily because I think she is trying to have a relationship with her daughter and granddaughter, but she doesn't really know how to, and she was brought up in a very different generation. But yeah, Lorelai, she's really not as independent as Amy Sherman Palladino wants us to believe later on, because I do find now when I rewatch it, I find Lorelai really immature. And at the beginning of the pilot, she's still a few years older than me, than I am now, but I wouldn't act like that immature.
So she's 36 in the pilot, which is crazy because like
I thought she was 32 because she was 16 when she had Rory.
Yeah, and Rory's 16 in the pilot.
32.
Oh my
16
god,
plus 16.
God's sake, I can't do numbers.
That's okay.
I'm like, yeah, no, 2 16s are 36. No. Okay, you're right, 32. But yeah, so she is like our age, nearly. Don't know.
What? She's like 10 years older than me. I've just turned 22. What are you talking about?
Oh, I thought you were 21. I'm sorry.
I know, thanks. One thing that I did notice is when Lorelai goes to Richard and Emily's to ask about the loan or whatever, Richard keeps repeating, "You need money" to Lorelai, but Lorelai never goes to them for handouts in the first place. And in that same conversation, they do say, "Yeah, you've never come to us for help before." So I don't understand why he keeps saying you. Like, was the line meant to be said in more of like a "you need money," like kind of bewildered way? What like was that? Because I don't, and I love I think his name's is it Edward Herman? Let me see.
Oh, the actor.
Edward Herman, the guy.
Mm.
Yeah, Edward Herman. He was in a film called The Lost Boys with who's that guy? Oh, what's that guy? That guy he played Kiefer Sutherland. That's it. Lost Boys. Kiefer Sutherland. Alex Winter was in it. He's part of Bill and Ted. I really like Edward Herman, and I think he's a fantastic actor.
Yeah.
But I wonder if that line was maybe meant to be said a little bit differently because it's just like a "you need money," but she never goes to them in the first place.
I literally wrote in my notes like he's acting like she's some irresponsible spoiled brat who constantly takes money from them, but she never does that. She's not irresponsible with money. She's not constantly asking for help. She's not like I imagine that's the kind of line that like Logan's parents would say to him like later in the series. You know, I just it bothered me a bit. I don't know. It's interesting.
What
But
do you think about Michelle?
I'm conflicted.
I like him. He's meant
Yeah.
to be, yeah, because people will say, "Oh, he's rude because he's French," and it's like French people aren't rude. Parisians are rude, and he's meant to be. The guy who
Mm,
played him as a Parisian, like
yeah.
because they just, I mean, even well, my boyfriend's French, so I just know about this stuff, right? But most of France do not like Parisians
Yeah.
because they are more standoffish and rude and stuff. But I love him. I think he's so. I saw someone on Reddit say, we like him because we wish we could say the stuff he says without being fired. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's because I'm always like whenever I used to work in hospitality, whatever, I was always thinking, oh god, these idiots or people have walked in. I'm gonna have to do my job now.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna have to get further into my rewatch before I kind of like figure out how I feel. I remember I liked him a lot more at the end of the series than I did at the
Mm,
beginning. But like watching just in the pilot, he felt like a little bit stereotypical at times, which kind of bugged me a bit. But also, I liked that he was one of the only people who actually stood up to Rory a little bit and like didn't
mm,
take any of her crap and was like, "Why is your child at work?" and stuff like that, which
mm.
I thought was good. But I don't know. There were some bits where like I always pictured him as being like quite hardworking, but also like he was kind of out of patience with people. Whereas in the pilot, he came across as like a little bit more lazy, like not wanting to do his job and stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. So I'm kind of glad they made that change to move away from that a bit. But I don't know.
And what do you think about Suki? Because in the pilot, I mean, we're always told that she's clumsy, and I think Melissa McCarthy gets to have some great slapstick moments
Mm,
like later on in the series. But I do think in the pilot it was a bit OTT. Like she was
yeah,
just a walking hazard. Like she would have realistically, if someone just walks into a kitchen and the whole place suddenly is on fire, you're gonna fire that person. You know what
yeah.
I mean?
It's not my style of humor. So her kind of like, "Ooh, I'm such a quirky, clumsy girl" thing hasn't ever really done it for me.
Hmm.
I don't know. It's I like when she gets more serious moments later, but I kind of felt like in the pilot, I'm not quite sure what the point of her was.
Well, you know Drella the harpist.
Mm.
So she was meant to play as Suki in the first place, but her name is Alex Borstein, and she's actually Lois from Family Guy. And at the time, she had a different contract with a different TV show, so she couldn't commit to being Suki. So they made her a harpist just to be in the first few episodes because she's not in it past season one.
Yeah.
And then they I think they quickly sort of like came up with they already had the character of Suki in mind, but I think they actualized it a lot more once they got Melissa McCarthy in the role. So they might have not have even known where they wanted to go with it at that point.
Yeah, that makes sense. I am shocked Kirk wasn't in the pilot at all. I completely forgot about him because
Oh
he played a
yeah.
different character at first, didn't he?
Yeah, I think his name was like I don't think his name was Dirk, but I feel like his name was Dirk.
It was something completely different. And he was like a contractor or something, hired to do something.
Mm.
And then the next episode, they brought him back as Kirk, and then after that, he was just Kirk throughout it all.
Mm.
But I completely forgot he wasn't in the pilot, and I did kind of find myself missing him a bit.
Did you know that the pilot they filmed it in Canada, which is why it looks completely different to the actual set when they used the studio lot in, I think, Burbank or well, in California somewhere.
Yeah.
And Scott Patterson, who plays Luke, he was only meant to be a one-time guest role. He was just meant to play Luke once in the pilot. Um,
Really?
yeah, but they wanted him to come back, and at first they offered, I think, 2 episodes and then 4 episodes, but his manager hardballed them, and he got like a 5 or 6 year contract.
Good.
Which, from just doing a pilot, getting a 6 year contract, apparently that's almost unheard of in acting.
I'm glad though. Luke's my favorite bit of the entire series.
Mm.
I think he's great. And that little moment between him and Lorelai in the pilot, I love that. Where she's like, "Oh, you look nice," and he's like, he gets like all like blushy, and he's like, And then he's like, "You look nice too." And then he goes all like full parent mode on Rory. I'm like, yes, more people need to do that with her. Good.
Yeah, because he just had such natural chemistry, like
Yeah,
on-set chemistry with, well, I think with everyone and with Lauren Graham.
yeah. I like
Mm.
those two together. I think it's sweet. Yeah. Lauren Graham, did you know? Apparently, she married the guy who played her brother in another TV series.
No, I did not know
Yeah. So
that.
I read this in her like first sort of biography type book thing. It's like a series of small essays and stuff. And apparently it was like really conflicting for her because she's in this other series after Gilmore Girls. I can't remember what it was called now, but it's all centered around like families and stuff. And in it, she's got this guy who plays her brother, and they, started working together and they fell for each other. And then it was like really weird and conflicting for them because they had to be like brother and sister on set,
Mm.
and then like they'd leave and be together, and it was apparently really weird for them. So yeah, good times.
I
She's
feel like sometimes it's hard also to act as a sibling
mm,
because in Friends, well, obviously David Schwimmer and shit, what's it, Courtney Cox.
yeah.
Obviously they're not related in real life, but they have to play brother and sister.
Mm.
I don't know. In the first season of Friends, I've noticed that sometimes they're like I don't know what stagehand told them to do this, but Courtney will like be sitting on Ross's lap and that kind of stuff. And no, I've noticed like they're very
That's
kind
a
of
bit
like
weird.
sitting on his lap, and I'm just like, that's odd. I don't have a brother, but that's kind of odd,
Yeah, I wouldn't do that with my brother or sister. That's a bit weird.
right?
Yeah.
Yes, I feel like sometimes it
Mm.
can be a bit strange or hard. You know what I have noticed actually? I've noticed in TV shows that if you want, because we the audience are stupid, if you want the audience to know that this person is related to someone else,
Mm.
have them say, "Hey, big brother, hey, sis." And you know what? Gilmore Girls does that with Luke and his sister later on. She's always like, "Hey, big brother." Yeah, all the time. Liz. Always. And it's so annoying. It's like, okay, we get like, because I've never said to my sister, "Hello, sister."
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a bit weird. I mean, sometimes like well, when I was younger, people always used to mistake my brother and sister for my mum and dad because they're so much older than me, and I always looked
Mm.
really young for my age. So it kind of became a thing in like my life where I'd be like, "This is my sister, this is my brother," and I'd like preemptively introduce them to people like that. But yeah, I don't know. There was also a weird thing where my sister and her now wife came over to mine once, and
Mm.
someone's like, "Oh yeah, I saw your sister and mum here earlier," and I was like, "Not mum, not mum."
Oh God.
Yeah, it's weird. My family's odd. Oh, good
That
times.
that is very, that's why you should assume.
Yeah,
Never
I know,
never
right?
presume. I think also in the pilot with Rory,
Mm,
they, if you notice when she's talking to Dean, her outfits are way more grungy in the pilot because she's got this oversized cardigan, and
yeah.
then she's got like these big black like really cool looking boots with these like tights and a skirt and stuff, and she looks grungy. She looks like someone who, because all the
Mm.
music that she and Lane listen to, they've got like quite a, well, Rory likes a lot of rock music, and
Although she also listens to Macy Gray, so
hmm,
yeah.
Macy Gray.
Yeah.
Which one's that? I think they had her sing on the show, didn't they?
Um, they have a whole thing about like the CD, and Rory's like, I've lost my Macy Gray CD, and then
Ah.
Lorelai's stolen it, and then when okay, this is what I think is a plot hole. It's a really minor one, but it bugged me. So they have this whole thing in the beginning where Rory's like, I lost my CD. And Lorelai's like, no, I just stole it. Here, have it back. And then she hands it back. And then when they have that argument in the bedroom, Rory like slams the door and puts the CD in and like starts playing it. And then Lorelai walks out into the living room and puts the same song on. And I'm like, well, now you have two CDs apparently. But no.
No, it's artistic. It's just to show that they're like mother and
It's
daughter.
showing the similarities between them.
Well, I think like her style looked way cooler in the pilot because it was like, but I'm biased towards, grungy. I mean, I just like live in black clothes,
I loved that big oversized jumper
Mm,
that Rory was wearing. I thought it was great. And I thought it was really weirdly out of character for Lorelai to like mock her for it and be
mm,
like, oh, like why are you wearing that? Blah blah, and like kind of going on about it and like, oh, God forbid anyone see like the shape of your bones or whatever. I think she said something
mm.
like that. I thought that was really weirdly out of character for her. Yeah.
But they're both kind of bitchy. Like later on in the series, we see that they are kind of bitchy
Yeah.
towards people's fashion senses. I mean, which I think, like, because
Especially strangers and stuff.
oh yeah, and they fat shame and stuff, like all the like that's a prevalent theme in Gilmore Girls. I think my fan theory as to why Lorelai and Emily are always butting heads is because I think they're very similar people,
Oh,
and
they
that's
are.
why,
And
yeah.
you do see the parallels between them in the pilot as well, which I
Mm,
thought was interesting. Like as much as they were setting up the parallels between like Rory and Lorelai, they were also showing them between Lorelai and Emily, and I thought that was really good. I did like that.
mm.
Like especially that scene where they're like sat on the sofa and Rory and Edward are like sat there with their newspapers, and like Lorelai and Emily like they even like frame them to look similar as if it was. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. Um, but yeah, Emily I think has the best growth in the revival, but we'll talk about that when we get to it. But I didn't like her for the entire series.
Well, I think the growth in the revival was because they had to rewrite, well, not rewrite at the time. So Amy Palladino knew like how she wanted to end Gilmore Girls as she was
Mm,
writing it, right?
yeah.
So when it came to the revival, well, Edward Herman passed away, so she
Mm,
had to rewrite Emily's arc and ending. And I think Emily's arc in the revival is the only good one.
yeah.
Everyone else is
Yeah.
either like dumbed down, doesn't make sense. I'm going to do a whole video on why like the revival just doesn't make sense. It's because Amy Sherman Palladino is a very petty woman. But I'll get to that on my main channel. So I think that's why Emily had a good send off, as
Yeah.
it were. Um, I think like even in the Friday night dinner in this episode, she is trying because she says to Richard something like Lorelai's the executive manager of the inn, isn't that wonderful? And
Yeah.
she's not being sarcastic at all. But then Richard starts being a bit mean about Christopher, saying that Rory must get her brains from Christopher, just like kissing Christopher's ass. He's not even there,
Yeah.
and he's the worst character. Like, shut up.
Yeah.
So Lorelai storms off, and then she takes her anger out on Emily because Emily is the only one out of the two who bothers to go to the kitchen to go talk to her.
True.
Emily originally didn't say anything nasty at all, but then she's a proud woman. She starts reacting to Lorelai's anger, which is just misplaced because really she's
Yeah.
angry at her dad because she's got daddy issues. I think because I remember the pilot a bit differently. I remember like Emily being really out of order, but when I rewatched it today, I thought, this is miscommunication. Like Lorelai's pissed at Richard. Emily's just trying to like at this point just trying to make a relationship with her daughter and granddaughter. I didn't find her too villainous in this episode. In season 5, I've just gotten to the bit where she's trying to meddle in Luke and Lorelai's relationship, and I'm like, but I just think that's bad writing.
I think my issue with Emily is like she's a bit of a snob, but mostly like she wants Lorelai to be happy in her way, and
Mm.
she can't understand that she's happy in a different way, and she's just a little narrow-minded for my tastes, and that bothers me a bit.
Oh yeah, she's very narrow-minded because like not only were Richard and Emily like alive and brought up in a different time period,
Mm.
um, they're also they're also brought up in just an entirely different class system because you just have like this thing that this is the way you live your life and it's to this
Yeah.
standard and you don't ever move your luggage. That's what the help do. Um, And if you fall pregnant out of wedlock, then you get married.
Yeah.
And that's insane to try to make
Yeah.
two 16-year-olds get married in the first place. But I could also, like when you've got these proud, wealthy people whose image is really important to them, they're very self-obsessed in that way. Like you can see why it would make your family look bad. So I can see where everyone's coming from, though I do think I'm on more of the side of don't try and marry off two teenagers because that is mental.
Yeah. And when,
You know?
when she was like, oh, we could have got Christopher a job in insurance. You could have done that with your dad. And I'm like, that's like your privilege talking, and you're trying to control them again, and you're not letting people find their own path, and that
But that's what they do in that world, because that's Logan's problem, that his dad wants him to take over the media enterprise, and he just doesn't. Like Logan says something about him being pushed through the door as soon as he was born. Like that's the point of them even having children, to carry on their own legacies, but with wealth,
But they do kind of turn Rory into that as well. Like the whole way through, like even in this episode, she's like, I want to go to Harvard, I want to go to Harvard, and all this stuff. And that's like what the whole aim is. But again, as soon as Richard and Emily come along, go, well, actually, have you considered going to my college? And then they put the good words. Sorry. Yeah. And then like they put a good word in for her, and like they throw a bunch of money in it and stuff. And again, Roy being fickle just changes their mind and goes along with that. It's like they couldn't mold Lorelai, so now they're trying to mold Rory into their little clone.
Oh, Rory was 100% their second chance at having the daughter that they wished in the first place, which like that's fucked. But there's certainly a lot of moments throughout the series where Richard and Emily are very proud of what Lorelai has accomplished.
Yeah.
Because like, and again, it's the getting older thing. I understand that she was controlled, and I would have rebelled against being controlled too. But when she had that baby, and then suddenly she just leaves and doesn't tell them where she's going or anything, like as parents who they do care, but in a very strange way, but they do care. As parents, it must have been difficult for them to have their child and now their grandchild like off out being homeless somewhere. There's a lot of trauma within this family.
I think like it bothers me that they're so judgmental about like Lorelai working as a maid and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that really bothered me. And Lorelai's like, no, I started there and I worked my way up and I did this and I did what I had to like provide for my kid. And it bothers me that Emily can't see the good in that,
Well, I think it's shown throughout the series that Emily is a bit jealous of Lorelai's independence and Lorelai's wife, because Emily is just this businessman's wife, and she does all the events and she handles XYZ for him. But she's shown throughout the series to be a bit jealous of what Lorelai has accomplished, especially in season 5 when her and Richard break up a bit. And then in the revival, after he dies, she finds like she gets rid of the house and she starts doing what she wants to do. But I guess for Emily and Richard's age, like their parents must have been born in like the 1900s or so, like some old time, so they would have been very strict about, no, this is what you guys are going to do. You're going to grow up and basically be the wife of a businessman. You're going to be a businessman, which would be very difficult. I don't think I'd have done very well if I'd been born in that time period.
Oh God, me neither. But I also think that's why I like Emily's arc in the revival so much, because now she's trying to like figure out who she is and find her identity without Richard, and I kind of like that for her. It's like I think that's what she needed. It sounds horrible, but I do feel like for most of her life, Richard was kind of holding her back a lot, But I mean, he also gave her opportunities and stuff, I guess, and they were happy together and they loved each other. But also no.
Yeah, she was happy to do that, but then it's good to see that she had that growth post Richard, instead of just completely falling to pieces and not doing anything else. Because like she is quite a fiery person. You can see that's where Lorelai gets a lot of her fieriness and stuff from, and her like the witty crap that she comes out with as well. What did you think of what did you think of Dean in this episode? Because for me, this is like pre-anger issues Dean, and he also knows about literature, so this is pre-jock Dean, because they totally like rewrote his character a little bit in the later seasons to make Jess more intellectually like on the same level as Rory. They dumbed Dean down, but Dean, he knows about literature.
Well, he noticed the books she was reading, but he hadn't read any of them himself. And like when she was reading Rosemary's Baby, he was like, "Oh yeah, I like the film."
Oh, the film. Oh
So like,
yeah, he did
yeah,
say
that
that,
was
didn't he?
funny.
Yeah.
He, I don't know. I think we could see signs of him potentially becoming a bit like controlling in it because like he was going on about like watching her all the time and like it just seems a
Yeah, but because he's got like floppy hair and
bit.
stuff, that's totally romantic. But if he was Butters, that like should be calling 911.
Oh, it's I don't know. He seemed like a little bit of a blank canvas in the pilot.
Mm.
Like they didn't quite know what they wanted to make of him yet, so they just, you know, I don't think there was a lot to say about him. One thing I did notice though was when he was talking about like the guy who got like hit by the football or whatever and all the blood, and then like Rory didn't like move because she was immersed in her book. You know that line that she says, it's something like,
Oh wait, no.
yeah, I've got it written
This
down. Go on.
maybe I didn't look up because I'm unbelievably self-centered. It's foreshadowing. Like
It
that's
is. It
foreshadowing.
is. I was like, oh my God, that's like nearly self-awareness, but no.
Which do you know what? Like I sometimes I question a little bit what Amy wanted to do with Rory's
Mhm.
character in the first place because she is self-centered. She is this like adulteress. In the revival, there's the 30-something club, and they're kind of seen as loser millennials because Amy Sherman Palladino has some sort of issue with millennials, God forbid, right? They're loser millennials who haven't really accomplished anything, but then Rory is also a loser millennial, but it's almost like Amy sees her as a boomer and stuff. I don't know. I don't understand what the character arc was even meant to be for Rory because I do think like I did like a lot of people were disappointed with Rory's story in the revival, but I think it makes sense that she failed because I like she didn't have the grit to be a foreign war correspondent. Like no, well, like she was pampered and sheltered her entire life. When she gets a D, like the whole town, carols around her to be like, no, it's okay. Like she was never going to be okay in a war-torn country with bullets flying overhead. Never, you know. And she was also just like she's a nepotism baby. She's a nepotism grand baby, given all of these opportunities because Lorelai wasn't. Yeah, she definitely would have had trust funds set up for her. I think it makes sense that she was a bit of a failure in the
Oh yeah,
revival because
absolutely.
everyone's just been like kissing her ass and like pretending she's this perfect little sweet angel, but she's not. She's a very flawed character.
Yeah. I do think they kind of, I don't want to say they hid it in like the first few seasons, but they didn't make it as obvious, and she wasn't as unlikable in the first few seasons, especially on the first watch. I think the big turning point was the whole Dean thing,
Mm.
the sleeping with Dean. But I don't know. I think maybe at that point I don't want to say like she stopped hiding it, but I'm not sure. See, you've rewatched more recently than me. This is like my first rewatch in a couple of years. So
Mm.
I don't know, I'm interested to see how I'm gonna change as we go on, like my opinions
Oh,
and stuff.
when she sleeps with Dean, she never once feels bad for
No,
Lindsay. No.
no, she's always like, but it's my Dean. And Lorelai's like, no, he's Lindsay's Dean.
He was my boyfriend first. Like, grow up, go away. Yeah, she never. Well, I think there's a moment where she does feel bad for Lindsay because she sees her at this butcher's trying to get the perfect roast beef for Dean, and I think she has a moment of feeling bad, but she never expresses regret over helping because it takes two to tango, but helping end a marriage.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like she didn't even seem like, did she even apologize to Lorelai in the pilot for like all the drama and everything?
No, she just says that she's going to go to Chilton, then Lorelai's
Yeah.
happy about it, but no one ever seems to just go, I'm sorry. Like, no
Yeah,
one communicates properly in this show.
it's very annoying because like there's all the drama and everything, and also I feel like she's I don't know. Sorry, I had a thought and it's completely gone from me. But yeah, she's an interesting one. But I don't want to be just like a pure Rory hater. I think there's probably some good things about her, right?
Give me a moment and I'll think of some. No, I don't mind her so much, but she's never the standout person for me. Lorelai annoys me plenty, but I think she's a very standout character, and I think Lauren Graham is beautiful for starters. She's almost like a classic beauty. Like she wouldn't be out of place in some sort of 40s black and white film. Do you know what I mean? She's
I
very
can see that.
classically
Yeah.
beautiful.
And can we
And
talk about
she
how
mm,
amazingly she aged as well? Like in the revival, how incredible did she look?
oh yeah.
Insane.
Oh yeah, I wish I could age half as gracefully as her. She looks like, I mean, in the next episode where they go to Chiltern, she wears this little outfit. We'll talk about it next time. But she looks fantastic. Like she looks
Yeah.
so good. I love
Oh
her.
my God. Sorry, while we're on this conversation, can we talk about the like early 2000s outfits and clothes? Because I love them all so much. You know that scene in the school, in the classroom, where like the camera like goes up to all the girls and they're like painting their nails and stuff? All the outfits in that scene are fantastic. I love that.
Yeah, I feel like when Lane finally moves out and she has her own place and her room is so pink and there's like frilly things everywhere and just lots of like plastic and whatnot, it's very early 2000s.
Oh yeah. And the music as well. Oh my God. Oh, I forgot how good the music was in the like entire
Mm,
show. Like the pilot alone had like the Laws and obviously the theme songs Carol King. Like it had
mm.
really, really good music and it just made me feel very nostalgic in a good way. It was nice.
I remember one episode where Jess Rory wants Jess to do more with her because
Mm.
he's being a lousy boyfriend, and then he offhandedly is like, yeah, I got tickets to go to the Distillers. Let's go see the Distillers tonight. And the Distillers are this Australian punk band.
Mm.
Brody Dahl was the front woman for them, and like I would have killed to see the Distillers live. Like that is so cool. Brody Dahl is awesome.
I don't know. It feels because when was the first season released? What year was that?
2000.
Oh,
Gilmore Girls was
2000.
released in 2000.
I actually thought it was a little later. I was thinking more like 2006-ish, but no. 2000 still basically the 90s
Mm.
in my mind. Like what year was Dawson's Creek out? Because I always kind of like put them together in the same era in my mind. Did you ever
I,
see
I,
Dawson's Creek?
I never watched it. What is Dawson's Creek about? Is it about a bloke called Dawson who owns a creek?
Um, it is about a guy called Dawson, and they live by a creek. And it's just like a group of friends and stuff. And like Dawson wants to be a filmmaker, and his best friend Joey is played by Katie Holmes, and they're best friends, and they have sleepovers together every night until they realize they have feelings for each other, and then it gets weird, and there's this whole thing. And like, I really liked the first season, and then I watched the second season. And I was like, oh, they just literally undid everything in the first season so they could remake it again. And
Mm.
like nothing ever really changes. They just keep like putting people together and then breaking them up and putting them together and breaking them up, and it's just very cyclical, and it got kind of a little boring for me. But yeah, it wasn't my favorite. I still never finished the whole thing, but that had some great music in it. Okay, so that was 98. So that was a bit before Gilmore Girls, but they're still very much like
Mm.
of the same era.
Did you ever watch The OC?
No, not seen that.
No, I only
That's really
just watched it recently. I
nice.
watched the first two seasons and then I got like a few episodes into season three and I just couldn't, I don't know, I couldn't really deal with it because I enjoyed it. But it's so dramatic,
Yeah,
as in, like, I don't even know how to explain it. It's just so, like Adam Brody's character is always fancying this girl called Summer. And then they'll get together in one episode, and in that same episode, he'll do something that's like vaguely kind of skirting lines of cheating, or she'll do something, and then they'll break
yeah.
up, and it's just like, can you just like stay together? Like that for me, it's too dramatic,
Yeah. I
you
know.
know?
Have you seen Pretty Little Liars?
No, never, though. People keep talking about it.
Oh my God, I could rant about that for a long time. It's an absolutely terrible show with all these horrible things happening and all these predatory men that it's all played off as romance. But then you start watching it and it's really, really addictive. And even though you never get any decent payoff for anything, you just keep watching.
Mm.
It's excellent.
I think So when I went to LA on a media trip with my college, we went to the Warner Brothers and we got shown around the lots and stuff, and you get these tours and whatnot,
Yeah.
and you get to go through the houses, the studio houses where they film like Desperate Housewives, or whatever. And there
Oh
was
yeah,
one that was a classroom, and you're not allowed to touch anything, right? You're not allowed to move things because they're active sets.
definitely.
And there was one that was a classroom, and I wrote something on one of the chalkboards. Like nothing like too, but that's just like a little something. And I don't know if that was like Gossip Girl or Pretty Little Liars or whatever. I don't know. But I'd be interested to like work out the year and then see if like on the chalkboard there's still that little like thing I wrote. But I did it so subtly because like one of my classmates was getting told off for like picking up a fake orange. And I was just there just like writing on this little chalkboard.
I feel like Stars Hollow as a place isn't really explored that much in the pilot, which I thought was a bit of a shame. But yeah, I feel like as the series goes on, Stars Hollow becomes almost like a character within itself, if that
Mm,
makes sense. And like the town has like a lot of personality, and you have all these different things going on. But like I found it interesting that it wasn't really explored much in this. And you have the whole thing with like the hayride and Lane being made to go on the hayride with this like prospective guy and stuff like that. But I feel like later in the series, that would actually be something that Rory would kind of like be involved with and like a
mm.
part of because they were like way more involved with the community. So that kind of surprised me a bit.
Hmm.
Does that make
Did you
sense?
notice? Did you notice that the shots itself for the show felt different? Like it felt off. Like
Mm.
it felt like there was lots of close-ups. I don't know how
Yeah.
better to explain it. I just noticed like lots of close-ups and lots of switches in between perspectives. So like well, when she's in the coffee shop in the beginning and that
Mm.
guy's talking to her, there's the camera switch. Like it's on Lorelai because she's talking, then it's back on the guy. Whereas I feel like normal Gilmore Girls, it's a bit of a wider shot and it's the characters
Mm.
talking at the same time. It's less of that kind of
Like,
POV.
I think that's quite typical for a pilot because they're still finding their feet and figuring out what style they want to do things in. And, they'll get feedback before they go on to do the whole series and stuff, which is fair enough. But I felt like there were quite a few little like technical errors in it, which bugged me a bit. Like there were whole scenes where like they weren't quite in focus properly and stuff like that.
Mm.
Like there's one where Lorelai's talking and the focus is on the wall behind her, and she's just ever so slightly out of focus, and it really bugged me. But
Yeah, there's quite a few of those in season one because there's definitely
really,
one scene where Rory and Lorelai are in the kitchen and
mm,
you can see the microphone coming down like a little bit.
really,
Yeah. Yeah, there were definitely some teething
oh,
issues.
bless.
I'm glad
Yeah,
that they went for the style of which they shot the rest of the series at rather than this person talking quickly switch to, you know what I mean?
that makes sense.
It feels a bit more natural the way that they've done it since.
Yeah, I felt like the pilot wasn't as funny as the rest of the series either. Like I didn't
No.
find myself like having a little giggle at any point. So it's just like, okay, fine. But yeah, so I feel like they really kind of found their comedy footing as it went on. I feel like the only bits that were kind of really intended to be like funny were the moments with Suki. But again, I
Mm.
don't really enjoy the slapstick stuff, so that wasn't really for me. But again, what was the point of her in the pilot? She didn't do anything to further the plot.
No, she was just there to be Lorelai's confidant,
Mm,
I guess.
yeah,
That was it.
but
Well, I think it's good that they developed her more, but I've definitely noticed
yeah.
in my rewatching that um I find her actually a little bit annoying because I think she'd be a wonderful friend to have, but as a business partner, I think she's diabolically awful.
Oh
She is
yeah.
not someone I would never go into business with a person like that. She's so unprofessional. She's so like, sorry, I know you've just had a kid, but the world doesn't stop. So don't promise you're going to do stuff and then don't do it and be like, oh, but I have a kid. Like, we know that. Like Lorelai has given you the chance to not do these things if you have to look after your kid, but like, women have been having babies for thousands of years. It's nothing new.
Well, there's a scene in the pilot where she sets the whole stove on fire. And then she's like,
Mm.
oh, fire me, take it out of my paycheck. And Lorelai's like, okay. And she's like, no, wait, please don't. I'm like, stop it. Grow
No,
up.
no, she breaks an entire oven. Like,
Yeah.
sorry, I would fire. Well, I don't know. Like Would I fire a chef for breaking an oven? Maybe if it was the first time, I'd be like, okay, it can. I've never broken an oven personally, but you know what? What do I know? I'm not a chef. I'm sure it can happen. But she breaks ovens. She like smashes pots and pans all the time. She's clutch. She's like the insurance on that place would be through
Oh
the roof just because of her.
yeah. You wouldn't want to start a business with her. It doesn't matter how good a cook she is. She's gonna lose you money. It's
Mm.
ridiculous. Other than Michelle, are there any actual adults in the series?
Actual adults. Luke's definitely an adult.
Oh, Luke's an adult, of course, yeah.
Yeah, Luke's a proper adult.
I guess Richard and Emily are a little bit, but maybe I don't know.
They have their moments.
Yeah. Suki's not an adult. Lorelai's
No,
not an adult.
no.
Uh,
Max Medina, I would say no, he's not an adult because they had an argument and like later on they have an argument, right? And his reaction to that is then let's get married in the middle of an argument. That's not something an adult would do.
what? Are you saying you don't argue and get married like on a daily basis?
Oh yeah, all the time, but you know,
But we're allowed to. We're YouTubers.
do as I say, not as I do. Oh, Jess, older Jess. Older Jess is an adult.
He's an adult, yeah. You know, I don't know if I like Jess or not. I can't ever decide. I think it's because in my mind I always see him as the guy from Heroes. It's that actor. I find it really hard to see him in other roles as like other characters.
Oh, I
think.
never watched that, so I only really know him as Jess
Ah.
Mariano. Or also, he was in one of the Rocky films
No.
as Rocky's son. So, like, there's that. But I only really know him as Jess. So for me, like, I like him some of the time.
Mm,
I think as an adult, he's perfectly fine. He's way too
yeah.
good for Rory as an adult. But teenage Jess, he's a bit of a drama king.
Mm. How was he related to Luke again? Was he nephew?
His nephew, yeah.
Yeah. Hmm. No. Luke's daughter. When we get there, I'm gonna have some things to say about her character.
When we get there in 4 years' time.
Oh, so much to say. But no, we're still on the pilot. I think it's gonna be very hard to like just stay on one episode, but I think we've done okay with this one, right?
Yeah, no, I think so too. Like it's well, hindsight is a wonderful thing,
True.
isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's funny to see like those little bits of Rory are
Yeah.
kind of there from the beginning. Lorelai, it's not really there, as in you like she seems like she has her shit together, and
Yeah.
that just devolves as the series goes on. Luke, well, to begin with, Luke was this incredibly like I don't know if socially aware is the right term, but he was just a very aware person, you know, saying things like red meat's going to kill you. Do you know
Yeah.
what damage golf courses do to the environment, that type of thing. And I feel like as the series went on, they dumbed him down a little bit,
Yeah.
but that can tend to happen with series anyway. The longer they
Yeah.
go on, the more characters just become
What's it called? Flanderism or something?
yeah, the Ned Flander
Yeah.
thing. Well,
Yeah.
like every Simpsons character is kind of the epitome of the Ned Flanders thing, you know,
Yeah.
because every Simpsons character eventually just gets reduced down to its
Yeah. Stereotype.
like, well, but like the thing about the Simpsons that gets me is the Simpsons is about stereotypes. They're all stereotypical. The Simpson family is the stereotypical nuclear family. Like
Yeah.
the dad's overweight and he's got like a, you know, he's a bit of a deadbeat and he's got a dead end job, and the wife is like just staying at home and doing the cooking and stuff. Like every character is a stereotype. But you know, but people want to have a go at it now when like that's what
Yeah.
it's been for almost 30 years. But that's the point of the show.
Yeah. It surprises me that it's still going because I don't really feel like it's relevant anymore. The average family in America isn't like that anymore.
Mm.
You can't have a house like that, a job like that without a college degree. You can't, like, they just couldn't afford that lifestyle on his salary anymore, things like that. So I
Mm.
feel like, as iconic as The Simpsons is, it just doesn't feel relevant or real anymore. Like, they're still relying on these old stereotypes that aren't really the case nowadays, you know?
Yeah, they should have stopped doing it at least over a decade ago. I've
Yeah.
not even watched the most recent seasons.
Oh God, I tried to watch some really, really bad. I think around season 25 was where I gave up because I was like,
Hmm.
I started doing
Well,
this thing where like if I wasn't interested in the episode, I would just like skip to the next one. And I just got to a point where I was like skipping every episode. I was like, oh, okay. I'm gonna stop wasting my time on this now.
Well, my friend watched every single episode of The Simpsons because they put them on Disney Plus. So
Yeah.
he sat there literally for months. He would watch a couple of episodes a day, and because we both love The Simpsons, as in like seasons 1 to 11,
Yeah.
like
The good
seasons 1 to
ones.
9, 1 to
Yeah.
yeah, like the golden era. We both, we grew up on that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And he
6
says that
o'clock every
like
weeknight.
yeah, he says that it gets really, really like worse than hell for like a lot of the seasons. But then there are just a few of the later ones where they change the writing team and actually they're not too bad. A few of the later ones, I'd have
Yeah.
to get like the specifics because he
Yeah.
knows because he sat there and watched it. But he said like, a lot of them, like apparently Lisa Goes Gaga is one of the worst rated episodes, and it's something
Yeah.
about Lady
It's
Gaga
really
going
bad.
it's some like nonsense.
Yeah. It's awful. I saw it. It's really bad. It's oh. And I like Lady Gaga, and I was like, no,
Mm.
none of this. But I actually watch a few YouTube channels that are like Simpsons histories and stuff like that, and like they do all these like analysis of Simpsons episodes and story arcs, and like some of them do like whole character histories and stuff. It's brilliant. I love that stuff.
Mm.
Even though I don't really watch it anymore, I still really enjoy those videos. They're great.
I enjoy watching videos about Simpsons Hit and Run because it was one of the
That's
best
a good game.
PlayStation games. They've got to remaster it.
Well, have you seen that video? There's a guy who is basically remaking it himself, but with like, new graphics, new elements, that sort of thing. And he's like redoing all the quests and showing you how you would build it from scratch, but with like, today's tools. It's amazing. Such a good series. I think he's on like 10 episodes or something now, and I've watched them all. They're so good.
Oh wow. No, I haven't seen that. I'll have to check it out.
I'll find the link, I'll send it you. It's great.
But that's it for our review recap analysis of Gilmore Girls. Gilmore Girls, not The Simpsons. Episode 1, the pilot. Next time we're going to check out episode 2, the Lorelai's first day at Chilton. See, like I literally know these things off the top of my head. It's
Rory's first day at Chilton.
the Lorelai's because it's both of them.
Oh, the Lorelai's. Ah,
Yeah.
I see what you did.
See, like
Wait, do
this
they have
mind.
episode titles or are they just
Yeah.
Oh,
The episode titles are usually references to because Amy Sherman Palladino, I'm just going to call her Amy from now on.
Yeah.
Amy, my best mate, she like loves a little pop culture reference.
Mhm.
The Gilmore
Yeah.
Girls is littered through it, so a lot of the titles are as well
Ah,
in reference to something or like some old
Yeah.
TV show or whatnot.
that makes sense. I like that. Yeah. Okay, cool. Episode 2 next. We got this.
Episode 2, we will attempt to do these weekly, but you know that that's a bit of a joke whenever I say I'm going to do something weekly. Look, I'm a very busy person, all right? I'd sit at home and I have to binge watch TV shows all day. It takes up a lot of my time.
That's true. Also, do you think you can put up with me for that long for us to get through a whole 7 seasons and a revival?
No, you're absolutely fine. I'm more worried about me and my mood swings. No, but I hope that people watching, I hope they enjoyed. I hope we can reach the Gilmore Girl fandom because like I adore the show. I
Mhm.
love it. It's my favorite show, but I think it's even just better to analyze and bitch about Christopher and Rory.
Pull it all apart, every bit of it, until we hate it and then love it again. Be great.
Yeah, like all good relationships.
Of course. I'm going to get Team Luke t-shirts made and we have to wear them every episode.
Yeah, why do people care about Team Dean, Jess, or Logan? It's all about Team Luke.
Through them. Luke. I love
Oh,
Luke.
but are you Team Dean, Jess, or Logan?
Oh, God. Honestly, I don't like any of them. Adult Jess, probably, but no. See, you couldn't trust Dean because he's a cheater. Jess, as a teenager, is just like a little bit of a wreck. He's fine as an
Troubled.
adult, but yeah. And then Logan is just through and through a douchebag. He's horrible. Rory
But that
deserves him, but
well, that's why I'm Team Logan because Logan and Rory deserve each other, so they don't have to inflict their nonsense on anyone else. But yeah, adult Jess is way too good for adult Rory. Rory.
I just think Rory actually needs to be alone and like grow up and learn to do something for herself for once. But that's just me.
Yeah, that's not going to happen though. Anyway, thank you guys so much for listening or watching. Remember to give us a like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Spotify and on iTunes. And we'll see you guys next time, hopefully next week.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Fingers crossed. Bye.